What happens when we stop pretending? Everybody knows performance enhancers are used in high level sports, even if no one wants to say it out loud. I mean, why would they? They're banned, right? But now there's a new concept pushing that conversation into the spotlight: the enhanced games. A proposed competition where steroid use isn't just tolerated, it's actually encouraged. So today, we're not just asking whether it should be allowed, we're asking if it's already happening behind the scenes, and if putting it out in the open makes it better or a whole lot worse. Welcome back to the Jackie Kaminsky Experience, where we break down the biggest myths, mistakes, and strategies in sports nutrition so you can always perform at your best. And today I am joined by Dr. Guillermo Escalante. Dr. Escalante is a doctor of science in athletic training. He's a certified strength coach, a competitive bodybuilder, a university professor, and a consultant on the Athlete Health and Safety Advisory Board for the Enhanced Games, where he's helping design the protocols for how PEDs could actually be used safely. So before you guys keep listening, make sure to like, subscribe to this episode, to this channel, because we are getting into some good, fun topics today. Dr. G, thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me. I'm excited to be here on your show, and I'm excited to get to talking and letting the world know about some of the things that we've been up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that you had presented this at ISSN this past year, and I got to talk to you briefly about it, but I was seeing it all over the internet, and first time ever that we're like talking about, wow, performance enhancing drugs, steroid use actually being legal in a competitive sports setting. So just to give everyone else some background, if they're not familiar, and just kind of explain a little bit, like, what exactly is the enhanced games? Like, what was the idea behind it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great starting point to this episode. And really, the enhanced games, the idea is really to not demonize athletic performance enhancement in any way, shape, or form, and basically allowing anything that's available to us to be used for the purposes of enhancing performance and athletic performance. So in addition to performance enhancement substances, it's also using technology and leveraging, pulling on every leverage available so that athletes can perform at their optimum, at their maximum, really, and maximize performance. And really, it's one of those things where I think for so many decades and decades, a lot of sporting associations have really demonized the use of performance enhancement substances in their sport. But at the end of the day, there are a large percentage of athletes that are enhanced, even if they're tested, even if they are passing these tests, does not mean that they are completely clean. I'm not going to say there are athletes that are not 100% clean. There are some that are not utilizing, but there's also a large percentage of those athletes who are still passing these tests, and they're just doing it under the radar of they know how to pass the test, and they know what substances they need to take. They know how to time these things. So instead of just ignoring this and really just bringing it out of the surface and not demonizing it, let's actually say, it's like, you know what? We know that this is part of sport. We know that in order to really see the world records being broken, to see the best performances possible, this is really kind of part of the game. So let's not demonize it. Let's put it on the table. Let's make it acceptable. It's not cheating, because everybody who's in the enhanced games knows that, hey, I'm able to use this stuff if I want to. You don't have to do it. There are people at the enhanced games who may still want to complete clean, and they can do that too. But there are those that the person next to you may be enhanced. So you go in knowing that. So the whole thing of cheating goes out the window, because there's no cheating, because everybody has the capacity to do so. But going one step further, the other thing that's been really neat about the organization is athlete health and safety is at the forefront of the sporting events and the activities of interest to the organization for the athletes. So we really want the athletes to be safe in what they're doing. So in doing that, these athletes are going to be some of the most highly tested athletes in terms of medical testing to make sure that they have a clean bill of health while they're doing it. And when they're utilizing the substances, we really want to create the safest protocols possible, so that way we're using, hopefully minimum effective dosages that actually help, because more is not always better. And I think sometimes people go to the spectrum or to the side of, well, competitive bodybuilding, right? Like putting in as much stuff as you can. But the reality is if you're going to be the best swimmer in the world, the best sprinter in the world, more is not always better, right? There's a point of diminishing returns, because we're not just looking for sheer size and for sheer strength. We have to kind of combine, optimal size, optimal strength, optimal body composition. So really just putting in more of these substances into your body is not always the answer. So you need just enough to get the competitive edge that you're gonna gain from these substances. And that also kind of creates that fine balance of giving enough so it's effective, and enough so that you're not necessarily putting the athlete in harm's way. So that being said, a lot of these athletes, while they're going to be utilizing these substances, they are going to be medically tested on a regular basis with blood work. There's a slew of physicians and healthcare providers, exercise physiologists, that are all overseeing the health and safety of these athletes. And then we have protocols available where, in the event that there are unhealthy biomarkers that are showing up, then we have protocols to reduce the dosage or change the drug, or maybe that athlete is not responding well, so they're not a candidate. They're not going to be somebody that is going to respond well to these particular protocols. So the protocols are designed very carefully with the health and safety of the athletes in mind. We're not just basically going blind and prescribing just crazy amount of stuff.
Are you allowed to kind of get a little bit more into the protocol? Like this past Enhanced Games that was in Vegas, what were the main sports? I remember swimming being one, but I know there were a couple others. And what specific enhancements or drugs are these athletes using? Are you guys recommending in your protocols? I mean, I just know of the basics, so I'm not even super familiar with everything that's out there. Especially in the bodybuilding world, they talk about so many different ones that, in my space, because drugs aren't allowed, right? Even though we know that they're on them, like we just kind of turn a blind eye and be like, oh, well, I'm just not going to listen. If I don't know, then I can't be implicated negatively. But in this situation, we're talking about it openly. So in this past Enhanced Games, what were the main sports, and then what were the specific performance enhancing drugs that the athletes were utilizing?
Well, right now it's still very much in the baby stages right now, because we did have one athlete who was a swimmer, and that's the one that broke the world record in the 50 meter freestyle, but he wasn't competing against anybody. There were two athletes that they actually showed on the video, and one actually did break the world record in the 50 meter freestyle. So right now, the sports that they're focusing on right now are going to be the immediate sprint sports. They kind of try to avoid things where there's subjectivity. So things like bodybuilding, that's very subjective, right? It's like there's a judging panel that's deciding. Even gymnastics, right? There's a judging panel that decides a score. Whereas in a sprint, there's no question who's faster, right? Like it's what does the stopwatch say? Who won? And that's really what they're looking at. So we're looking at the sprinting type, anaerobic capacity type of sprinting events initially. So there's going to be some swimming events going on. At the first true enhancement is going to be in Vegas in Memorial Day weekend in 2026. So May 2026, we'll have more athletes. So there's still athletes being recruited right now. Fred Curley is the biggest name that's been recruited in track and field. So Fred Curley is going to be running the 100-meter dash in the Enhanced Games in 2026. He just signed on literally a few days ago. And then there's another German swimmer who I think does the butterfly. So there's a few big names that have already signed on. But that process is still happening basically on a daily basis. They're recruiting, they're getting athletes. Those are the three big names that I know that they've recruited. So two swimmers and then one track and field athlete, but they're going to be recruiting more of these folks over the next several months. In terms of the protocols, it's really going to be, we've developed different protocols, but really people think that you have to get all fancy with, it's like, oh, what peptides are you using? It's really the basics, and we're really going with, fundamental anabolics one that have been clinically approved. So we're not using stuff that's for veterinary drug use. We're not using stuff that is because I mean, these are some of the things that a lot of bodybuilders use, right? So we're
Yeah.
using stuff that has been FDA approved at some point or is currently FDA approved. So testosterone is at the base of most of these compounds. So testosterone cypionate or enanthate or propionate. So we have basically long-acting esters or short-acting esters, depending on what's appropriate. And then you have some oral substances like Anavar is one that is also has been FDA approved. Decadurabolin is another one that can be FDA approved. Primable and Depot is another one. So those are some of the levers that we may be pulling at different dosages depending on what the different protocols are going to be. And then human growth hormone, of course. So really, it's not anything that's crazy. And the dosages are not out of this world. They're actually, to be honest, if most bodybuilders were to look at some of the protocols, they may actually like laugh at how little they're actually getting, because we're not really mega dosing these individuals, because the reality is there's no point. You're not going to get, if I mega dose a sprinter, it's going to work against them, not for them, right? So this is what's important for people to understand, is a little bit goes a long way.
Can you explain a little bit about what the benefits of each one is and why you would prescribe it in a protocol outside of testosterone and growth hormone being the obvious ones?
Yeah. So, I mean, you basically have to figure out, one is you have to kind of look at them in a spectrum of how they work, right? So testosterone, you usually kind of want to pull on that lever, but once you get to, it's going to be individualized for each person, right? But once you get to certain levels, you may actually now get unwanted side effects. Like you may actually get a lot of water retention, or you may get maybe some gynecomastia for some of these guys. So that's not necessarily something, obviously, that you want. So this is where you may use some of these other components. And the other thing you have to think about too is maybe you have an individual who has a phobia of needles, right? So they're not going to be a candidate for injectable testosterone. So maybe they do a testosterone cream, and then maybe we leverage an oral compound at that point in time, which is where Anavar may come in. So that's basically what happens with some of these. Some of these are going to maybe aromatize less than others, or not aromatize at all. So that means you're going to have less water retentive properties, and you're going to see that in like Primable and Depot, for example. So there's very little aromatization with Primable and Depot. So you can pull on that lever, which may lend itself for more of like these power activities where in a strength sport, like if you're doing like, let's say, a power lifter, you could probably leverage more testosterone and maybe less of some of these other compounds. But a sprinter, we probably want a small testosterone base. And if we want to go give a little bit more performance enhancement edge, you can probably leverage like a Primable and Depot in a small dosage. And then that basically packages up what you want to do. So
Okay, so
you
they're
got to
all
look at
like anabolic steroids in the sense that the main point is to build muscle, improve recovery, speed, strength, things like that.
Yeah, and then they come with, obviously, like I said, some are going to aromatize more than other. You also have to look at, the half-life of each one of those. So, like, when would I leverage testosterone enanthate versus testosterone propionate? And then you kind of look at, well, the testosterone enanthate is going to be in the system longer. Propionate is going to be in the system shorter. So you could actually, it's got less water retentive properties. So depends on what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
And it was my understanding too that the athletes coming in, I mean, you guys are creating the protocols to have the safest metrics and use as possible to avoid unwanted consequences or negative side effects. But it was my understanding that some athletes are able to go in and kind of completely do their own thing, right? So it's not like they have to follow your protocol in order to compete.
Yeah, there's basically three arms of individuals that we have kind of looked at. So one arm of individuals could be somebody that says, I still want to compete in the Olympics. I want to be drug free, right? So those folks can still compete, right? If they want to compete, they can still compete. They can be clean. They can pass a drug test. They don't have to do anything. But again, they're making the conscious decision that the person next to them may be doing stuff, right? Group B would be the people that actually come in and they go into the enhanced games protocols that have been developed by us. And then the third group would be people that are doing their own thing, but with the asterisks of they still have to be healthy, right? So they still have to pass. They still have to pass the medical exams to clear them for physical activity. So if you're doing whatever you want, but your blood pressure's through the roof, and then your blood work looks like junk, and your heart scans don't look good, you don't qualify. So you're not going to be able to compete, because the last thing we want to do is put people at risk. So yes, they can do what they want to a point, but if their health biomarkers are garbage, then they're not going to qualify to compete.
So what were kind of some of the results that you had seen this past games then with, I mean, first of all, did you even have any individuals who wanted to compete completely clean?
Well, no, because we really haven't even had like a first formal event yet. We just basically highlighted the individuals who we put on some of the protocols. So we basically just had 2 swimmers. They were both 50-meter freestyle swimmers, and then they were put on the protocol. So the guy that broke the world record, he was an Olympic swimmer just recently, and then he's the one that actually broke the world record. The other guy that was on the protocol, he was more of a he was a world record holder at one point in time, but he was retired from swimming for a while. So and then he came back, and actually that's the guy. When you look at, if you watch the video. It's on the website of the Enhanced Games. You can actually see it. So if you watch the video of him, he was actually taking much higher dosages of some of the drugs. And when you actually see his transformation over time, like, I mean, the guy looked like a bodybuilder almost. I mean, he was huge. But to my point earlier, his swimming performance was garbage, right? In the sense of he didn't really get that much better, right? Whereas the other guy, when you look at him, he was using stuff, but much lower dosages, in lower quantities. And yes, his body did change, but I mean, he still looked like a swimmer, like a world-class swimmer. He didn't look like a bodybuilder, right? So, and with that physique, he was able to break the world record using the right amount of stuff and the right combination of stuff, which again, it kind of goes back to my point earlier, where more is not always better. And really, especially in some of these sports where you don't really want a ton of stuff, and your goal shouldn't be to look like Jay Cutler or Ronnie Coleman, right? It's like your ideal physique really is just to complement your whatever is your sporting activity is.
Exactly. I know we say that all the time, that abs doesn't always equal performance, right? Like just because somebody's shredded, like if, in fighting, for example, just because one fighter has a 12-pack doesn't mean that the guy who's kind of got a little dad bod isn't going to knock him out in the first 5 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah. So kind of going back, obviously you're in this world, you are on the advisory board to kind of help develop these protocols. And you kind of made a point earlier, and like, of course, we all know that athletes use performance enhancing drugs. Like you said, they know how to time it correctly, kind of get it out of their system. So kind of now with the Enhanced Games, do you see like a legitimate argument for giving athletes full autonomy over their bodies? Like, where do you see this conversation going now with the Enhanced Games? Like, hey, should we bring it more out into the open, or should we talk about more regulated use so these athletes aren't doing it in dangerous quantities or doing things that are going to disrupt or have negative impacts on their performance? Like, where do you kind of see this going? Do you think that athletes should just be able to take whatever, or do you think that there are some serious consequences and negative side effects that need to be monitored? Well,
I've always been of the opinion that, we should be able to do with our bodies whatever we want to do with our bodies, and it's really up to you. I mean, it's your body, right? So, I mean, whatever you want to do is like, hey, all you, as long as you are aware of what those you go in with an educated decision, knowing what the consequences may be. So so that's why my biggest thing is educating individuals, and it's like, hey, these are the consequences that go along with XYZ, and these are some of the things that you want to look out for. So that way, when you're going in and you're making a decision with a fully informed consent, right? You're consenting fully. It's like, I acknowledge what the risks are. And I know what I'm getting myself into. To me, that's why I think it's sad that a lot of these organizations really kind of turn their eye, because, I mean, they're not stopping the athletes from using them. And I think what's happening is it's becoming like more of the wild, wild west out there, where people are doing these crazy protocols and crazy dosages without medical oversight. I really think that the Enhanced Games has done a great job in being the first organization that's actually saying, you know what, we're not going to demonize it. We're actually going to instead embrace it. And number two, investigate it. Because, I mean, when you look at the scientific literature, there really is not a lot of scientific literature into what happens when you're taking these drugs, or any substance for that matter, at super physiological dosages and looking at health biomarkers. I mean, you can't run a clinical trial that way because they're ethical. So it's really hard to do it. It's observational stuff. But here we're actually able to, we know what the athletes are taking. We know how much they're taking. The other part of the coin is, what about the quality of the substances, right? Right now, because everything is, underwater, right? Everything is hush hush. The compounds that people are getting are, you don't necessarily know what you're getting, right? So you're getting them from underground laboratories. You don't know how they're produced. You don't know what kind of heavy metals or other substances may be mixed in. You don't know if you say you got 200 milligrams of this substance, you don't know if it's actually 200 or 300 or 150. If it says it's testosterone and anthate, you don't know if it's really testosterone and anthate, or, who knows what's in it, right? Whereas now when you're regulating this stuff, you know that what is being provided is what's being provided. Hopefully it's an FDA approved compound, and you know that it's been manufactured under best practices. You know that it's a clean substance. You can trust the label where it says 200 milligrams, it's going to be 200 milligrams. And whenever you put it inside of you, it's going to do what it's supposed to do, not have these other crazy side effects. Because there have been studies where they've actually tested these underground drugs from these underground labs, and what they find is a large percentage of these are either heavily underdosed or overdosed, or they're heavily laced with other things that shouldn't be there or that are harmful to your body. So you have a lot of unknowns there when you're leaving it to these individuals, because you leave them no choice but to get it from underground labs because you're not able to get them elsewhere. And then the other thing is you're also not allowing for the medical supervision and oversight from qualified professionals, right? That know, that actually are physicians, that are clinicians, that are actually looking at this. So I think it's actually a more responsible way of approaching this. That's really overarchingly caring for the athlete and their health and their safety and their well-being. So, I mean, I hope that the movement, right now there's a lot of controversy with it, because a lot of, people like WADA and whatnot, they're like, well, what are you guys doing? You're promoting unhealthy protocols and unethical practices because, you're cheating. I'm like, well, no, we're not cheating, because we're disclosing right away that everybody can use it, right? So to me, the cheater is the one that is using and is saying and is lying about using, and then they're going up and saying that they're not using, but they really are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a cheater, right?
We see that, and we see that all the time. With fighters, people are getting called out all the time that, oh, he was on steroid use, blah, blah, blah. We see it in so many sports. I think with the Enhanced Games, though, do you think with the results that we saw with the swimmer, for example, he broke the world record? I mean, we all know as practitioners that it's already widely used in sport. It's just hush, hush under the radar. So do you think that with the Enhanced Games that we're going to be the athletes, like just massively crushing world records, or do you still think it's going to be fairly competitive to what numbers and records that we're already seeing?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. And I think part of me wants to think that maybe we won't see as crazy world records being broken, just because, like you said, a lot of the top world athletes are indeed enhanced, right? But I will say, like the world record holder in the 100-meter dash, like I think Usain Bolt really was a clean athlete. I don't think he was necessarily enhanced. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with some of these other folks who are, maybe very close in terms of his talents naturally. And then what if you give a little bit of this extra help, and then, openly, without having to worry about passing these tests and whatnot, what may be able to happen. I think that's going to be a very, very curious observation to see what goes on. But you're right. I mean, some of these world records may still uphold, in the sense that maybe those athletes who hold the world records were just able to pass tests and remain uncaught, right? I mean, Marion Jones
Yeah.
is a perfect example of that, right? I mean, if you remember back to
Okay.
Marion
Yeah.
Jones, I mean, she was a world-class sprinter, right? And how many drugs did Marion Jones pass over how many years, and how many medals did she win? And she was never caught. But guess what? She was enhanced the whole time, and she, that it came out after the fact, after she had already won all the gold medals and, and set all sorts of records. That's when she got caught, after the fact, not when she was already a retired track and field competitor. And that's when they caught her, after the fact.
Did they revoke all of her medals or no?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh wow. So that's another interesting point then. Do you think that with more enhanced games and seeing if these records are being blown out of the water or not, are top athletes going to start being looked at a little bit more closely and questioned if they were, competing fairly or not?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I mean, I do know that some of the blood tests, and they save those for a long time. So sometimes the technology of today cannot detect certain substances, but the technology 7 years from now can detect certain things. So sometimes they go back and they look, and if they look under the rug far enough, sometimes they may be able to find some of these individuals like Marion Jones, who is using.
Damn, that's crazy. So what because I know you keep saying that there's athletes can figure out how to cycle them. So when athletes go in for testing, I know that they test athletes, but I don't know specifically what it is that they're looking at. So like what are they looking at when an athlete is getting drug tested, and how would they be able to kind of fly under the radar in terms of being able to be enhanced but still pass these tests?
Well, some of the things that they look at is one basic one is they can look at the testosterone to epitestosterone ratio, and there's basically a normal range where it's acceptable. That range used to be a little bit wider. They've made it now a little bit smaller, because when your body when you give your body testosterone, there's a certain amount of epitestosterone that will kind of accompany it. Once that ratio gets above a certain threshold, and I think it's like 1:6 if I remember right, but if it gets above that threshold, then they're gonna look at you, and it's like, well, it's not physiologically possible to have a ratio of 1:12 if you're not really using. That's one. But there's other things that they look at. They can actually look at the metabolites too, and this is where some of the drugs of choice, they're going to be able to see certain things. So you can look at the metabolite of decadurabolin, for example. What that can stay in your system for 12 to 18 months. So
Oh wow.
not a drug of choice for somebody who's going to be tested. But the metabolites of some of these others, it can be in and out of your system in a matter of a few days.
Wow.
Those would be things that you may be able to utilize. Like you can use like testosterone suspension, which is a water-based testosterone, and that clears your system in a matter of a couple of days. So you wouldn't be able to see that. Of course, what's funky about WADA is, like the world track and field athletes, for example, the world-class track and field athletes, they can show up at your door anytime, right? And they can call you tonight and say, we're coming to see you tomorrow morning, and you better be at place X tomorrow morning at the time that they're supposed to do. If you're not there, they give you, maybe a one-time excuse or a two-time excuse. But if you're consistently not showing up, then that's the same as you not passing the exam, and then you can be banned for all of those things. So that being said, there are chemists and biochemists that develop these drugs, and these athletes make a lot of money. There's millions of dollars at the table. You can very easily hire a chemist or biochemist for a couple $100,000 a year to design special drugs for you, right? If you're going to be making millions of dollars, right?
Yeah, what's a couple
Why not take
100,000 is nothing.
It's nothing, right? You got your own chemist designing special things, and these individuals know exactly how to play the game in terms of, they're smart enough to know how to compound their own substances that are completely undetectable. So when they're looking for the metabolites, it's almost like me telling you to find, like, well, why do you find a penny, but you don't know what a penny looks like, right? So you need to know what a penny looks like for you to find a penny. Same thing with these drug tests. So the metabolites have a very specific, I'm going to say, face to them. And then, but you have to know what face you're looking for. Otherwise, you're just kind of blend into the background. And, some of this goes by the molecular weight and, how the drug is made. And I'm not a chemist by any means, but I do know what kind of chemical tests they perform, and it's very easy to create a compound that's still anabolic, that has a particular backbone that's going to have specific performance enhancement substances, and then you add a double bond here, you add a carbon atom there, and then all of a sudden that becomes unrecognizable.
Okay. So it's like it'd be like they're going in testing looking for pennies, but you were able to design a nickel, and so they're never going to be able to find it, even if it's in your
Exactly.
system. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. All
And
right,
I
so I
mean,
didn't know that.
and if you remember, I mean, this was back when Barry Bonds was hit for a lot of stuff. So I mean, this was 20 years ago. But the clear, that that's basically what the clear was. The clear was a designer steroid that was designed by a bright individual who knew what they were testing for, and then he developed an anabolic steroid that it was called the clear because you couldn't find it. It was
Oh, wow.
transparent. Yeah, and then the only way that they were able to find it is somebody leaked information, and then they sent the clear to the testing bodies that were actually doing that were doing the testing, and they say, "Oh, by the way, you guys have been looking for pennies, but they've been using this nickel for performance, and
Yeah.
here's what the nickel looks like." And
Wow.
then they were able to develop a test to find the nickel. You see what I mean?
Yeah, so we got some whistleblowers in the field out here.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
Wow.
yes.
Okay. So, what are your thoughts then on the drug use in certain sports? So, like, let's take combat sports, for example. Something that's already high risk, cutting weight. Is it something that you see in safe doses, controlled, could be more helpful or detrimental? Like, what would the consequences? Is there, with the weight cutting aspect, like more strain on essential organs like the liver and the heart and the kidneys? Or can it still be used over time and actually maybe even save some of these athletes from those really horrible side effects of the weight cuts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that some of these substances can be used safely and effectively in sports, like some of the fighting sports, right? Whether it's boxing or MMA fighting, whatever the case may be, you can definitely utilize them. In fact, I think it may actually help enhance recovery time. It can enhance performance, and I think. And again, I think what you have to be careful with again is the quantity that you're using. And these athletes probably, this is why it's so important. If you actually open it up, you probably realize some of these athletes may be using protocols that are designed for bodybuilders, not for fighters, right? So it's like, okay, so you're following this protocol made to be the next, world-class bodybuilder, but you're the best fighter in the world. You're not the best bodybuilder in the world. So
Yeah.
why are you using a bodybuilding protocol? So again, with fighting, like a little bit goes a long way. And I think you can certainly develop protocols that are more appropriate specifically for the sport of fighting. And obviously, like in fighting, if you're going to be up against weight limits, right? Like you probably want to stay away from high dosages of testosterone because you're gonna probably go up a weight class, and now you're gonna have to or to make your current weight class, you might have to do a more drastic cut, which just kind of goes against the principle altogether, right? So those are some of the things that I think you want to kind of consider. And I think more importantly, you probably want to consider what are the weight cutting strategies that they're using. And I mean, and you do a lot of this work, but if you're using now diuretics or other things, that I mean, that's where the real danger comes in, is in using some of these high risk compounds inappropriately, which again, you really don't need to do it. So I mean, to me, if I'm working with a fighter who I know is going to have a weight limit, I'm not going to utilize a cycle where they're going to gain a ton of weight, right? Because that's an unwanted side effect for that particular athlete if they
It'd
want to
be
make
like
a
the same
particular weight
thing as
class.
making them take creatine and all this protein and amino acids when their lean mass is already significantly higher than what it needs to be for the weight class. It's counterproductive to the process.
Exactly. So unless they want to go up a weight class, it's a completely unnecessary, right? So and at the end of the day, being too big as a fighter will probably work against you, right? I mean, you need mobility, you need strength, you need power, and sometimes having too much size in that regard is not going to provide those other two things. You might some mobility, you may lose some of the power that you're able to implement.
Yeah. What about in the sense of preserving like thyroid hormone and metabolic markers. I know that there've been some case studies in fighters who have done extreme crash dieting. So I guess you could talk about it in the sense of low energy availability, how that significantly depresses their resting metabolic rate. And I mean, over time it'll recover. But I know that they've done quite a few studies because bodybuilders obviously use the performance enhancing drugs. So even, and they'll probably do just as much as a caloric restriction over the course of their preparation. So, do the research with the drug use showing that it can help preserve some of those markers, or do we still see significant decreases in the thyroid hormone and resting metabolic rate?
Well, I mean, now you're looking now at like maybe other substances you can utilize. So
Okay.
you're looking at maybe T3 or T4, which
Mhm.
can actually support, the thyroid function at that point in time. So if you're looking at some of those things as you're losing weight, I mean, that's not in any of the enhancing protocols because we're not cutting weight with any of the
Yeah.
athletes. But if I was working with fighters, that would be a lever you could pull if you needed to. So let's say that you're going through a cut phase, and then you notice certain biomarkers, let's say thyroid function is inhibited at a certain point. You could pull the lever of, okay, well, let's pull the lever of putting them on T3 or T4 at that
Mhm.
point in time to actually compensate for some of that. And then that may actually mitigate some of those things that occur over time. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to certainly be able to preserve lean body mass when using the anabolic substances, right? So even if you're in a deficit, you are going to be able to preserve a lot of that lean body mass that a natural athlete would not be able to do when they're
Mhm.
when they're in a caloric restriction, right? So I think that's the other benefit where you're going to be able to train harder, longer, and also not, even if you are in a deficit, it's not going to be as detrimental to your performance, your recovery, and your lean body mass over the course of a 12 weeks or 16-week cut.
No, 100%. Yeah. All right, well, to start wrapping things up too, I want to do like a hot take. How can we ensure like medical safety and long-term health like with enhancement? Because we're, obviously we're not having people on these crazy bodybuilding type protocols where they're dropping dead at 40. So like, is it possible to still use performance enhancing drugs and maintain long-term health and safety throughout the lifespan?
I think it's possible if you do it right. I think it takes a lot of monitoring because you have to monitor on a regular basis. So I'm gonna say, you know, blood tests probably 3 to 5 times a year. So I like to say every 12 to 16 weeks at minimum, getting some blood work done, and then getting blood work when you're on cycle versus when you're on cycle and off cycle. It's important to look at what's going on in the body because some people only do blood work when they're off the stuff. And okay, that's great. But if you're on stuff for 40 weeks out of the year and you're off stuff only 12 weeks out of the year, you're missing a big part of the picture because you need to know what's going on in the 40 weeks that you're on, not just the 12 weeks that you're off, right? So I think it's important to look at those things and then making sure that the biomarkers are coming back to normal when you are in the off phases, and making sure that things aren't skewing over time. So I think it's important to have a historical data of all of the major biomarkers. And then if you see certain things trending upward over time, or out of range over time and going more out of range and never coming back, then that's the first warning that you need to change what you're doing and how you're doing it, right? And I think you can definitely do that when you're looking at your whatever cycle you're on. You can modify the dosages or change the drug if you need to. You might realize like, hey, like this drug doesn't work well with my body. So you just change the drug at that point in time. And then you might find that other drugs work very well with your body where you get a ton of benefit and very little side effect. And then you may have some individuals where they just don't respond to anything very well, right? So, and then those are the people that you're probably not a candidate at that point in time, right? Like if your biomarkers are going out of this world when you're doing some of these things and you've tried doing lower dosages and you've tried doing lower drugs and that's still the case, and you're not feeling good, well, then you need to make a choice at that point in time. It's like, maybe you're just not a candidate for using this stuff and you're putting your
Yeah.
health at risk at that point in time. So I think you can definitely do it, but it's not an easy fix. It requires, I think, the oversight of a qualified medical professional that understands the blood work, understands the biomarkers, understands the drugs and the interactions. And I think the other thing you have to be careful with is, and this is where a lot of athletes always approach things wrong. They always go under the, well, if some is good, then twice as much is better, and three times as much is even better. Right? Because that's the athlete mentality, right? It's like, you tell me to take one pill, well, I'm going to take three then, right?
Yeah.
And I think so educating them on, it's like, hey, no, like, let's find the minimum effective dose. I mean, that's really where you want to kind of teeter, where you're gonna get the most bang for your buck, and let it do its thing at that point in time. So I think you can definitely do it, but it takes a strategy, and
Mhm.
it's a process that takes time. Um, and you just can't put your head in the sand and ignore the health biomarkers that are going on. You have to acknowledge that some are going to be affected, and that's the funny thing about some of these things, is it affects people differently. You have some individuals that you can give them a lot of stuff and it doesn't affect anything, and then you have some individuals where you can give them very little and it affects everything. So, and you have
Yeah.
people in between, so you don't know who you're dealing with until you're actually running and testing things over time.
So then to just, I guess, create more open conversation, if you are going to do it, like what would you say are the main biomarkers that you need to observe? And then also, if you are going to do it, what questions can you ask your qualified professional to know they're legit? Because I feel like, especially in this space, it's all bro science. They're going to their friends in the gym, or they're like, oh yeah, he's a doctor, but like, it's just a made up title. He's not really a doctor. He just does all of this out of his garage. So what would you say, like, if someone is looking to get enhancements but go about it the healthier way, what should they look for in terms of the professional? And then what are those biomarkers that you say, like, let's say the top three that we should really be observing?
Yeah, well, I mean, really, the biomarkers, I mean, looking at basically anything related to major organ function, right? So I want to look at liver
Hmm.
function, kidney function, heart function. Those are all things that the top three I want to definitely monitor over time. So, and within that, you're going to be looking at cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, LDL cholesterols. You can probably go a little bit further into looking at triglycerides, looking at a pill of protein B, looking at those things over time. And then with that, you probably want to look at maybe certain inflammatory reactions, because so maybe
Hmm.
like C-reactive protein is something you want to look at. Homocysteine is something you want to look at. So because some of these go hand in hand, right? So if you have maybe really high LDLs, and then you have inflammation on top of that, biomarkers of inflammation, well, that's a catastrophe waiting to happen over time. I mean, you're not going to die tomorrow, but you expose the body to that to 10, 15 years, you're going to have big problems.
Oh yeah.
So those are some of the things that you want to look at over time. So I would look at the major three organs, and then, I mean, even some of the things just regular, like check your blood pressure at least once or twice a week to make sure that you're keeping track of what your blood pressure looks like. You want to look at your hematocrit levels. That's another big thing, because your hematocrit levels may actually creep up over time, and then now you have really thick blood from that. So you want to make sure that you're looking at those levels. So those are some of the things that I would look at in terms of, like, who you should look for. I mean, I think you should work with a qualified physician who understands true hormone replacement therapy, who's got an endocrinology background, and understands performance enhancement drugs, because some of these individuals, maybe they understand endocrinology, but they don't understand the interactions with the PEDs. So they're hard to find, but when you do find them, you can actually have good conversations. And then, of course, I mean, there are individuals who are healthcare professionals. Like, I know a lot of RDs who are actually in the field of bodybuilding and in the field of physique enhancement. And of course, they've had training in reading labs and understanding labs. And because they've been working on the field and they have that basic clinical understanding, they've had clinical nutrition, they understand some of these basic biomarkers, they've had biochemistry, they've had, et cetera, et cetera. They have the background, and then they're able to have the experience on the other side. I think they can often be an addition to the team, and I think it really takes a village. Like my personal team of professionals. So I have three physicians involved in my care, my personal care.
Oh wow.
and I have, I've been coaching myself for a long time, but just recently, I actually hired my own a bodybuilding coach that I haven't had in a
Oh,
long time.
wow.
He happens to be a registered dietitian. He worked as a, so when you look at the team, it's like, so I have my cardiologist, I have my primary care doctor, I have my hormone replacement doctor, and then I have
Hmm.
my coach, and then myself, and then we're all looking at everything together, right? And we see what's going on and see how things are affecting me to be the best I can be, right? And I think you
Absolutely,
need a
yeah.
team. You need a team of people like that you can trust, and whoever your healthcare provider is, you have to have an open conversation with them. You can't just hide and let them know, and pretend like you're not doing XYZ. You need to tell them everything that you're doing and in the dosages that you're doing them. Otherwise, you're not giving the right information. And you
Mhm.
need to be able to look at the labs and know, it's like, hey, I was taking this when these labs occurred. And then that way you know what levers you need to pull when you're doing it.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, real quick, I want to do some controversial hot takes, some questions. So these are just like very simple one sentence or yes or no answers. So my first one, do you think that nutrition makes a significant difference in somebody's performance if they're on the performance enhancing drugs?
100% yes. Absolutely, positively so. Yes.
I was kind of worried there because I was worried. I was like, I was like, oh, does it really matter like if how much protein I'm telling you to have? If you're taking testosterone, you're gonna build muscle either way. Um, Next one. Some say if we can't beat PEDs, should we regulate them? Do you agree or disagree?
I 100% agree. I think that the just say no doesn't work. Athletes are going to still do it. I think putting your head in the sand is not the way to go. I think accepting that it's used and regulating it is the best policy forward.
And last one. If an athlete loses because they didn't enhance, do you think that's fair or unfair? And this is not the enhanced games. This is just regular sport.
So I think in regular sport, if it is supposed to be a drug tested, drug free competition, and you decide to cheat by using, then I think it is cheating in that sense, because the agreement that we're going against is that, hey, we're not using this stuff, but I'm
Mhm.
sneaking behind you and I'm using this stuff. At that point in time, yes, I'm cheating because I lied to you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I think just moving forward, especially with the enhanced games and having more open conversation. I mean, this is not so much a yes or no, but or maybe it is. Do you think that if we are becoming more open with it, do you think athletes who want to stay clean are going to feel more pressure to take something because everyone else might be doing it and they're the ones that are winning?
Well, I think it may, but I mean, I think that's why you maybe want to have an avenue for those competing and that want to stay clean. Give them an avenue to compete all clean. I think that's totally fine. So have an organization where it is 100% clean, and hopefully people that are competing in those organizations are indeed 100% clean. And I mean, bodybuilding has this happen, right? Where there are organizations that are untested, so nobody tests, which means anybody can do whatever, and we know when you're competing that you can compete clean if you want, but you know that the guy next to you or the woman next to you could be using, right? In fact,
Mhm.
more than likely they are. And then you have these natural organizations. But when you see some of these natural organizations, this is where it gets annoying sometimes. They do test in some way, shape, or form, but you have a lot of people that are saying they're natural, but they're not natural,
Or not,
yet they're
yeah.
competing. And to me, that's just
The
such
natties,
chicken.
is that what they call them? They go around, are you natty?
Yeah, and that's to me that's just chicken. I'm like, if you want to compete with the people that are using, then compete in an untested organization, right? Don't let the people compete in natural organizations truly be natural. And and there are some phenomenal natural athletes even in bodybuilding. I mean, I have some personal friends that compete all natural, and when you look at them, they look incredible. And some of them, look like they're enhanced, and they've beat enhanced people.
Yeah.
They still can, but of course you're not going to get the big monsters in that category, but you can
No,
still
those are
have
going
some
to be
very
like, and the
talented
girl that's going to be
individuals.
like bikini, like the bikini girls can still be natural.
Yes.
Okay. Last question, because it popped in my head and I think I think it is interesting. So in the enhanced games, kind of going back to that, moving forward, do you think that because they're allowing enhancement, it's going to kind of become a slippery slope with trans athletes trying to come in and compete? Or is there kind of regulations in determining that and allowing that?
I don't think that's something that has been discussed yet, but I do think, this is my personal opinion with trans athletes. I believe trans athletes should be allowed to compete, but in their own category, particularly when you see a male to female trans. So let's say a man that's become transitioned to a woman, but he has been exposed, even if their hormones are normal today, they're like a woman's hormones right now, right? But they've gone through puberty, right? They're going to have an advantage already because, they've been exposed to the testosterone doses. So they became a woman at age 25, right? And they went through the transition over time. They basically had from age 13, 14 till age 25 where they were exposed to testosterone, and then that creates a significant advantage. So there's a biological advantage, and it's mainly in that transition. So women becoming men, that's not as big of a deal because you don't have that same advantage. But when you have a man who became a woman, even if their hormones are that of a woman today, unless they did that transition before puberty, which most of them did not, right? Most of them are going to do it as adults. You're going to have a definite advantage over all of the competition. And to me, that's truly unfair to the other female athletes. So that's where I have an issue with them competing. I'm very liberal personally, and I believe in if somebody wants to transition, I'm 100% supportive of that. But if you're going to compete as a female and you transition from male to female, I do have an issue with that because you are actually have a physiological advantage over a natural female.
No, I agree 100%. I think that we've documented that pretty clearly too, with research and just natural physiology over time. 100%. All right. Well, that wraps things up. Dr. G, thank you for your excellent insights. This has been even just a super educational episode for me. But if anyone wants to reach out to you, ask more questions, maybe even inquire for your services, where can they find you?
I think easiest place to find me is on my Instagram, which is Dr. GFit, and it's doctor spelled out GFit, and you can find me there. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, or you can just Google my name, and it's easy to find me there too.
Hell yeah. Well, I will definitely link it in all the videos and YouTube posts and send you everything so people will be able to contact you if they have more questions, which I'm hoping that they do. So everyone who's watching, thank you again. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and stay tuned because we will have more episodes coming soon. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.